Complexity is the friction that destroys effectiveness. Hi, this is Gary. This is another in a long running series of podcasts that began way back in 2007, but has been on a hiatus for a while I figure out what the heck to do with these podcasts. But thank you all who continue to download some of the evergreen content that has been at my website at automation.libsyn.com. This podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Inductive Automation. You need to check out Ignition 8 and the latest rev, and there'll probably be a new one announced soon because in 3 months there'll be another Ignition Community Conference coming up, and they usually have a lot of really cool announcements. But Ignition 8, I talk to their customers when I go out to their conference, and the customers all love the software. It's easy to use and powerful, and they love the pricing. And so when Steve first developed this, he had the user in mind, and it's very definitely many years later still the situation. So check out inductiveautomation.com and check out Ignition and all that it has to offer, and all the many things that it has. It's amazing how much that they've done with it over the years. So I start out with the idea of complexity, and that's partly because this year I've really cut back for many reasons on many travels, and I was to the ODVA conference earlier in 2025, and then I went to Boston to the ARAS conference. ARAS, that's a PLM company, and a really cool forward-thinking company. It may be the fifth largest. I'm not sure. I don't do that kind of market analysis, but I asked Claude.ai. At any rate, they do some pretty cool stuff, and what I like with them is what I've seen with some other companies, including Rockwell actually, is they don't really go overboard on the hype on AI. They actually just use AI in various guises, and they're doing some pretty cool stuff there. And then this past week, I was at the Hexagon Live conference in Las Vegas. Those IT people seem to really love Las Vegas for some reason, and that was pretty cool. And I know about Hexagon, but I've only been to one of their conferences, and that was just for a day. Didn't really know what to expect. I tried doing research, but it's a conglomerate, and they over the years, and this was their 25th year anniversary, and over those years they've acquired a number of companies, and that makes it hard for somebody like me that didn't grow up with Hexagon to figure out what they are. So I will get around to my theme of complexity in a little bit, but just to go back to Hexagon, what did the chairman call it? The world's most, not sophisticated, but like the world's best measuring tape. Hexagon does measurement, and they don't just do measurement. They can set up a laser scanner thing way back and be able to give a complete graphical representation of Mount Rushmore. They can set up some laser scanners that can take a scan of a small component part of an assembly actually in some cases even to the micron level. So they can go from the very large to the very, very small in their measurement capability, and they have software that goes along with it, Design X software that in various forms and guises that can bring it in, output IGES files for you CAD people, and that sort of thing. And they also have a lot of other software that they've come up with and acquired over the years. And that brings to one of the points, they've decided to spin off a lot of software into a new company called Octave. I'm told if you're in England, it's Octave. But anyway, there are 8 notes in an octave if you're a music major, and we won't go into the flatted fifths and things like that. But anyway, so the octave is they're taking things up to the next level. In other words, they're up a level, up one octave, if you will. And anyway, that's going to be sort of principally software, and they called it intelligence built to scale, and I'm going to riff off of a couple of things, and not so much the ARIS conference, but at ODVA I was at one a couple of years ago, and then this year, and in both cases, end users spoke up, and ODVA is kind of a standards or technology company. In other words, they write the specs for DeviceNet and Ethernet IP and various kinds of communication networking protocols. And end users, they've implemented, say, Ethernet IP, and they've got the system running in the plant, and then something happens, something in the network happens, and they have to, send a maintenance technician out, and those aren't dumb people. But the problem gets to be the pressure's on. I've got to solve a problem. I've got to get a machine up and running again, and complexity just kills everything going on with that process of getting things back up and running. And so therefore we get the plea, and I've written about it twice on my website, themanufacturingconnection.com, about, could you please simplify things a little bit? Make it such that we can find things, maybe a simple Ethernet IP address finding thing, or something that shows us some node that's pinging too much or not pinging enough, or whatever the thing might be, something to help us find and troubleshoot situations on the Ethernet IP, or, well, in that case, Ethernet IP network. And it would be the same thing if you're using Profinet or just plain Ethernet, whatever it might be on your network. Things have gotten too complex. I look at, to segue a little bit, I look at OPC Foundation, and OPC is an information model, and it's pretty heavy. But if you need a lot of information, that's good. You could use like an inductive automation, my sponsor, and plus MQTT. And MQTT is a lightweight protocol, but it doesn't give you the complete, even with Sparkplug, it doesn't give you the complete information model that OPC allows. But OPC keeps adding companion specs, and companion specs, and companion specs, and it gets so darn complex. And the OPC people tell me, well, that's a good thing. If people want it all, we give it all. And other people say, hey, it's just way too complex. So let me go on to some other comments that were made when the new CEO of Octiv was speaking. He talked about some surveys that were done, and one survey had to do with, how do I want to say this, CEOs, and they said, we're just not getting everything we expected out of our digital transformation program. Are you shocked? Actually, I'm not that shocked. I mean, it really should give them a lot of stuff. But on the other hand, there's an awful lot there to digitize everything. Try to find where the data is. Basically, he said we get too complex data, too complex dashboards, too complex visibility things, and we can't see into the facility, into the plant, into manufacturing, is such that we can actually manage things. And so I was going to segue way back into 1977. I had gotten a promotion where I worked. I was in graduate school, and the first semester of graduate school, the faculty voted to kill the graduate program, and I had just gotten married, and I don't know. So I did coursework for a year. I needed to write a thesis to finish a master's degree in political philosophy, which by that point I wasn't tremendously thrilled. And I heard about a job opening back in my hometown. So it was a summer job for college students, and I was technically a college student. So they said, okay, come back. I was at Louisiana State, and I went back to Jackson Center, Ohio. And they said, oh, oops, we're not going to do that program anymore, but we'll find you a job in our new component parts division. And I wound up staying there 5 years, and I have no idea what my title was, but effectively I was materials manager. I was in charge of inventory control, production control, purchasing in the sense of ordering stuff. I didn't make the to make it buy it here or buy it there kind of decisions. But I was told, you have to buy locks from such and such a place and window glass from such and such a place and so on. So I did 5 years there, and then I got promoted. They moved the product development center from California to Ohio, and the VP of product development brought me on board as the data manager. I was in charge of all the data coming out of the engineering department, and so part of that was the bill of materials. So this was all hand drawn, assembly drawings and that sort of thing, and component drawings. And we had all the specification sheets, and we had to do the bill of materials. That was my main responsibility, was all the handwritten bill of materials. If you can imagine, this was at Airstream. So an Airstream trailer has a lot of parts, and I got to know every one of those parts. Anyway, so we did the bill of materials, and my boss was more forward thinking than maybe he realized. So I was like the data manager. And so today we still have people who are trying to be data managers and data scientists and data whatever. And I ran across an application, a computer application from IBM, and it was called MRP2. MRP2, yeah. Anyway, Material Resources Planning. I think it started out Material Requirements Planning, became Material Resources Planning. Later on, it became Manufacturing Execution Systems, MES. And later, the MES Association changed it to Manufacturing Enterprise Solutions. But it was still the same thing I was doing in 1977 when I put the bill of materials on the computer. And then we connected it with the purchasing function and the cost function, and trying to keep our inventory and inventory costs and everything in line. And that was a big problem back then. So anyway, so to go back, so it's still the same problem. We're still trying to take all this engineering data and all this manufacturing data, and part of the program that I could have done but never got around to it because we scaled way back, and they came really close to closing, but Airstream is thriving these days again. Happy for them. But anyway, so that went away. But I learned about workflows and routings and all the other kinds of things you can do with an MRP system programmed on an IBM Series 3 and RPG3 with punch cards. Do you remember all that stuff? That was so much fun. But anyway, it's just the same problem. So it's still data. How do we make sure it's accurate data? How do we get it into a usable format for all the different functions that need that data? And now, we got the promise of SAP. SAP said, oh, wow, we can do all kinds of stuff with you and link our ERP with the factory floor. All we need is manufacturing data. Ha ha ha. That was hard to do. And we're still fighting that problem. So these CEOs and C-suite people responding to the survey for Hexagon basically said it's still the same problem. We have data silos. There's data here, data there, and they don't talk to each other, and it's all complex. And the dashboards don't really help us make decisions, and we can't maybe trust them anyway. And keeping all that data, all the fresh data coming in, and good databases, and all the technology. And I looked at all the technology at Hexagon. It's really, really cool. I'm a technology guy. I've been a technology guy almost my entire life. When I started building electronic circuits at about 14 years old. And I love technology, but I like technology that, shall we say, works. And, and everything works in its silo, and everybody's trying really hard to come up with, things that will bust out of the silo. But we still aren't there yet. I can't believe it. It's 2025, and executives are still saying they're having trouble with this. So I got to thinking, the technology is good. There is nothing technologically speaking that Hexagon or Aris or some of the other companies that I have visited do that's bad. They're all forward thinking. They're all putting stuff together. And I got to thinking, you know what? Maybe this is a people problem. Maybe they should learn from this Ford plant manager that I visited about 7 or 8 years ago as part of a visit with the MES Association. And they had this guy. I really respect him. I don't have his name, and I wish I could follow up and see whatever happened to him, whatever happened to that plant. It was in a Detroit suburb. But at any rate, he reorganized physically things, and he put the operations technology, operations engineering, or the control engineering manager in an office beside the IT manager. They're both using IT type stuff, but just different ways. The IT network is different from the OT networks. We always talk about that, and we've got the trite phrases about IT OT convergence, and which is interesting, also in a sense nonsense, because the IT network has different functions and different ways that it can be fixed and upgraded and so on from the operations technology networks that I was just talking about with ODVA. How can we make it simpler? But anyway, he put those two people side, their offices side by side, and then their direct reports, of course, are going to be right side by side too. Coming out from the offices and so on. And the plant manager looked at me and he says, "Hey, every day these guys come to work, and they have to say hi to each other, and and it leads to like any kind of impromptu conversation over coffee or something." And I thought, it's a stroke of genius. This is a people problem. It's not a technology problem. It's the use of technology that becomes the problem, and especially when people build silos. Now, why do people build silos? Well, in the old days, the OT guy might have been out in the plant on some mezzanine office or something, and the IT guy was hidden away with his network administrators and sysadmins and all that kind of stuff. And they would just grumble about each other because neither one understood the other one's problems. And you put them side by side and you say, "Hey, I got a problem doing this." "Oh, okay, well, you can do this," or here's what we're doing for security, or here's what we can do to upgrade stuff. And and so the building silos. So I knew an engineer at a chocolate factory build his own. This was a long time ago now, but he brought his own servers in. Now he's got his own servers, his own data. Everything is just his. It's not connected to anybody else's. Could their SAP system or ERP system, whatever, use that? Oh yeah, they could use it, but they're not going to get it because this guy, had total control of it in his own server in his own, closet off of his office out in the plant. And so I think we still have that. I've talked so many years about companies trying to bring in a new thing. Wonderware many years ago used to talk to me about how they were really good at consolidating all the Excel spreadsheets that were all over the plant, and they could as companies acquired other companies with different systems. Still a problem, still happening. And I think I'm going to propose more and more strongly, like every time I write, that this is a people problem. We need better leadership. In fact, I'm rereading Kevin Meyer's book, The Simple Leader, and you can still find it at thesimpleleader.com. He's a lean manufacturing guy, and I started reading his blog many years ago. He was just so common sense, and which I think lean is. And I tried doing lean before I knew what lean was. Just a lot of it was just common sense, but then the lean people, the Toyota production system, came along and sort of made a formal, if you will, process of it, something that you could follow, something you could implement in this factory and that factory and so on, and then bring in the same things. Way back when I had another job selling and trying to install Rockwell Automation control system stuff, a lot of my customers in Western Ohio were Honda or Honda supplier companies, and they were all lean, and so I picked up a lot from them. Anyway, I think the technology is advancing. The technology is cool. AI is going to help a lot. Generative AI might be able to help doing some level of programming or searching. I use generative AI for search. Claude is great for finding stuff. Making a trip to Nova Scotia, and I said, "Hey, I went once to a really great restaurant on a bay in Prince Edward Island and had the best mussel dinner. Where's the best place to get mussel dinners in Prince Edward Island?" And I came back with a whole bunch of stuff, much better than if I had done a Google search and gotten 10 sponsored links and then have to search through and try to find something. AI's got a lot of uses, and it's really cool, and it's going to get better, and it's going to get better. And is it going to replace everybody's job? One of the senior people at Hexagon says it doesn't replace jobs, it replaces tasks. So, yeah, that's a really good point. Anyway, AI is going to be good. The technology is going to get better. It's all good, but until we can get the people problem solved and get people all working together, um, we're still not going to see all the benefits that we could get from it all. So, at any rate, as you go back to your position in your factory or process plant or whatever you're doing, take a look at the people process. How do you get the people working together? Not by bullying or anything, but just asking questions, getting them to, have coffee a couple of times a week or whatever it might be, whatever kind of thing you can do. And, I'm geeky, I'm not really social, but it's good to be a little bit social and share some ideas and learn what you can learn from other people. And so let's get the people problem going. The technology's there. We can use. There's a lot of great technology. We just have to learn how to use it better. So anyway, after a long time off, this is Gary Minchell. You can check my blog out at themanufacturingconnection.com, where I write about technology and I write about people. And sometimes lately I've been putting a lot of personal development stuff on there because I'm really interested in how people grow as well as how they use technology. So check out themanufacturingconnection.com. And while you're checking out stuff on the web, check out inductiveautomation.com. There's my sponsor for many years. They're a great company. I've known the owners since 2003, a long time. And it's a lot of good people out there and a really good product. And their flagship product is Ignition. And so check out the latest of Ignition and how people are using it for fun and profit. inductiveautomation.com. This is Gary Minchell. Just asking, hey, try to be kind. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Thanks. Have a good day.